Hello, welcome back to my Global Digital School of Art, and if you are a newcomer, a big welcome to you also. Right, today's tutorial is going to be a still life, and I'm going to be using grapes and an apple. Look, I know they're old chestnuts, but there is logic behind this. It doesn't matter whether or not it's oil paints, pastels or oils. It incorporates all the problems you're likely to get, be it a landscape or even portrait. So it is rather long, and it's going to be rather detailed, and I'm going to break it down into sections. So think of this as a project, not as a painting. We'll do the little sections, and then once you're familiar with the task which you have in hand, you can then reassemble and put them back into a little picture if that is what you so desire. Right, now, before I get started, if you have accidentally, while cruising on the YouTube, pressed the button and found that I'm sitting here in front of you. Right, now, if you find that some of the things which I say, which are a little bit odd, but some of the things which I do, if you find it helpful to aid you towards improving your already existing skills, then go to the right hand side just below this picture you're looking at here, and you'll see my name. Click on that and it will bring you to my channel, where you'll find other little videos which I've done in the last few months. Right, now back to these great. Look, I know, look, my little bowl here is looking very sparse. Unfortunately, before I could get round to this section of it, unnamed members of my family had got to the goodies first. So I need to get this little bit done, because it's not going to be long before there's just going to be a single little grape rolling around there. Okay, look, I'm going to stop the chat. So let's get on with the lesson. And if you have comments at the end of it, please pass the comment along to me, and I will try my best to answer. Okay, so let's get the lesson underway. Okay, a little chat just before we get underway here. We're going to do apple, grapes and a glass. Right, now look, if I look at the apples I've got here, regardless of what apple I choose or which one I decide I'm going to paint, you're going to be looking at your apple and you're going to be wondering why your apple doesn't look like mine. In the same way as if I was to go along and place an apple on each one of the students' tables, their first reaction, having looked at the apple, they will turn around and look at the other people's apples, and everybody's apples look more interesting than theirs. Look, I'm going to be taking a little bit from each of these, by the way. I quite like the green on this one here, and green going into the core. The red is a little bit on deep, looks like a billiard ball on that side. That would be very uninteresting to paint, so I'll be looking for this break-up of colour here. Look, they're slightly different shapes. This one, I quite like this one. Look, it's a bit yellowish. I might add a little bit more green to it. Here, this one I find a slightly more interesting shape. Look, they're just different varieties, and yet they've all got things in common. Look, if I move in, look, these have got quite nice little flecks on it. Right, I can use those. So an apple is an apple. Right, now the glass, I'm choosing a glass because a glass has got a ping and an apple has got a thud to it. And I will keep that in mind when I'm actually painting. Right, now look, I've got some green grapes, and I've got some red grapes, And I find the red grapes are a little bit too close to the actual apple, especially the darker ones. Look, there's very little contrast between them. Okay, that could be a really big grape hanging on a bunch there. So I like this contrast I've got between not the green grapes and this dark red. There is a bit hard of a jump there. So I'm going to choose something mid-range. Look, these are nice complementary colours. So that's why I'm going to choose to do these two items here. Right now, the apple, as strange as it may seem, is probably a little less challenging than these grapes. These grapes, look, they're soft. And they're squidgy. And they don't have those little directional shapes on them in the same way as an apple have. So I've got to get them on a stalk of some sort. And when I come to paint them, if I get all my little too many watermarks in there, they're going to look like creases and they're going to look like slightly deflated. And that is going to be quite a challenge. Let me just zoom this in so you can see what I'm actually talking about here. Look, see this strata on the actual apple, and on the grapes, nothing. So they're going to be quite a challenge. Let me give you a little tour around my workstation I've got here. Look, I've got my drawing board and it is resting on a stool, and the lower half is resting on my lap, so I can actually move it up and down to the angle which I feel comfortable with. I've also got on here, look, I've got a clipboard, and I don't use it on a pad as such, because that big edge interrupts the flow of my hand. And the advantage of this is, look, I can move it around at any angle I so desire while I'm painting. Now look, lower down here I've got 2 bowls of water, and when you hear that double clink, and that, you'll know that I'm flashing from one bowl to the other bowl. Love that sound. Right, I've got a kitchen roll here. I've got 2 palettes. This is this larger one is the one I would normally be using, but for not having a split camera, I'll be using this little one so that I can actually bring it into view there. Right, now what else have I got? Look, I've also got, look, a block of wood here, so that when I'm talking about leaving something to dry off, I can control the angle of which that is going to dry without the board being in my lap. And if I want a shallow angle, I just turn the block over like so, and if I want it to lay flat, I can now leave it laying flat. Right, now a quick look at the materials I'll be using. Look, I've got a pad here of cartridge paper. I'll just zoom that in. It's 200 gram heavyweight cartridge paper. Now look, this is not as exciting to use as watercolor paper per se, but I tell you what is exciting. Look, it was on special offer. Okay, I love that. Right, now I've also got a pad here of I need to zoom that back a bit. A pad of tracing paper. Right, now if you are following my tutorials, you'll need to get yourself one of these because you'll be using it quite a bit. Right, I've also got my cheap set of watercolor tubes here. Look, there's so many colors on there. In honesty, most of these I won't even open because I'll be mixing them from 2 or 3 other tubes anyway. I've also got my cheap of 12 set of brushes, half price. Right, now I will be using these during the process, but look, in all honesty, I will suffer quite a bit using these, but we will go with what we've got, and I will show you as we go some alternative brushes, because if you're following my tutorials, it means to say you're getting into watercolor painting now. So rather than a set of 12, we'll go for 1 or 2 slightly upgraded brushes. I keep using this word cheap all the time. Look, there's nothing cheap when it comes to watercolor painting. Well, maybe my YouTube tutorials, but nevertheless, look, I'm going to stop using that word cheap now. I'm going to start using the word budget or economy now. There's a good word. Right, so I will be using economy stuff materials during this tutorial. Right, what else have I got? I think that's about it. Oh, I'll tell you what I have got. And you can't purchase this down the high street, by the way, a half price or cheap or economy in any shape or form. Look, I've got a load of enthusiasm and a bucket full of dreams. So I'm going to stop chatting. Let's bring them on. Right, now I'm going to scribble up my drawing, and I'm doing it on a bit of computer paper, by the way, and I'm using a 4B pencil so that you can see it on the monitor. Right, now we're looking at some grapes, so look, I'm just scribbling away. And the nice thing about this scribbling is that when I do one grape, look, I can go straight through, so they're almost like transparent grapes, so I can see where they come out from each other in relationship to each other. And look, here's my apple. Lots of lines, and here's my glass coming in now. Right, now look, you don't have to keep getting your eraser out and trying to make things correct. It doesn't matter, because all you're doing is you're very relaxed and you're just scribbling. Right, once you've done this scribbling, you're tracing a sheet of tracing paper. Right, now I'm now going to move down to a 2B pencil, and look, I can actually select whichever one of those scribble lines I want, because we now need to turn this to a single line drawing. So where I've gone through the grapes, I don't have to go through them on this one. I can just actually draw them out. I'm selecting as I go. Now, this tracing paper, you don't be tempted to use the greaseproof paper from the cooking, by the way, because it is exactly that. It's greaseproof. So therefore, you're going to be transferring grease onto your actual paper, and the watercolour, it will reject the watercolour. Now look, I'm not going to hang around too long on this one. And in fact, I'm going to refer you back to one of my previous videos. Which one was it? Pick and Mix, where I've gone into this in a little bit more detail. Right, now when I move off of my scribble drawing, look, I've got that single line drawing on there now. Let me just put on the top of the glass. There we are. Right, I've now got my glass, I've got my grapes, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over using my 2B pencil, And the reason I'm going to be using a 2B pencil, because on the pick and mix one I used a 4B pencil, and I'm coming down to a 2B because these grapes are very delicate, and on the pick and mix it was a very loose, casual type painting, and therefore the 2B will give me a little less graphite on my paper. Now look, I can now do either that single line, or if I wish, look, I can lay my pencil on the side and do that on a couple of different angles. Now here's the advantage of having this drawing. When I come to do my apples or grapes or my glass, I'm going to need to do a lot of dry runs, and ideally doing 3 on a dry run is a little bit too much. So when you find you're struggling with your grapes, all you've got to do now is, you don't have to go through the process of tracing up and all the drawing. Let's go back to my dead ballpoint pen is better. Don't press too hard because you'll actually dent your paper. Right, there's my grapes. I don't know if you can see them. Let me just zoom that in. There they are. Look, and when they go a little bit wrong, do some more. In fact, you can cover the whole of a piece of paper while you're doing your practice runs with these same little bunch of grapes, or the same apple, or the same glass. And as you gradually manage to master one, you can now put your trace in there, and you can do 2 and see if you can get 2 to work for you. Yeah, we can just about see, look, there's one bunch of grapes, there's the other bunch of grapes. So now it means to say that it's going to save you a tremendous amount of time. And just because when you go to paint your apple or your glass it goes wrong, you don't have to beat yourself up and think, oh, I've got to start all over again, because you haven't. Because all you've got to do is just pick up your tracing and put another little bunch on there, and off you go again, right? Right, now here's my finished tracing, and I can now place that onto my cartridge paper. Right, now in my case, look, I've got a little clip, I can just clip it under there. But if you haven't got this clip, what I'm going to suggest you do is to put on a little tiny tick mark either side. When you decide where your tracing is going to go in relationship onto your piece of cartridge paper, now all you've got to do is trace that tick marks there, so that when you start to use your ballpoint pen, systematically going through all these. Right, now the ballpoint pen isn't making any further marks on my tracing there, and look, I've got the, I don't know if you can see it, let me just zoom this in. Look, yes, you can just see this apple there, and I've got a couple of grapes, right? So what I'm now going to do is, if I have accidentally moved this when I looking underneath and there's a few grapes missing, I don't have to panic. I just put these little tick marks back in line there and there. That now means to say I can now carry on putting in the little bits which I may have missed. Right, now I've got what I want on my cartridge paper without getting an eraser and making alterations and destroying the surface of the paper. I've got what I want, and if it goes wrong, look, I've got my tracing to fall back on. And look, here's another nice thing about this tracing paper. Here's the other one I did a moment ago. Look, I can use my eraser on this tracing paper without fear or favour, because an eraser does not damage that tracing paper. So it now means to say that I can use the same piece of tracing paper over and over and over again. Now there's economy for you. Right, now here we have the actual tracing onto our cartridge paper. Now it is very faint. I think you can just about see it on the monitor, but nevertheless what we do now is we take a very soft piece of tissue paper and we very, very gently just wipe off any excess graphite which has come from your pencil. Now if you've got some heavy bits, use a very, very soft eraser and just very gently remove the areas which are the heavier areas around the grape. Now look, I'm not scrubbing back and forwards, I'm just gently lifting it off. If I scrub it too hard, or the eraser's a little bit too rigid, what it would do, it would start to disturb the fibres on your cartridge paper. Okay, so just very, very gently, and if you've used that, once again run your tissue over to make sure that you haven't left any residue of the eraser. Right, now I'm going to put on a little tiny wash, and it's well watered out, and it is a pale lemon yellow. Right, now I'm now going to apply this wash on the grapes, and on the apple. Now it's like I said, it's well watered out. Right, now the reason being is unlike we did on the actual cherries, I don't want any white highlights, because there won't be any white highlights on the grapes or on the apples. There will be highlights, but I don't want them white. Now look, I'm also going to flash just a little bit of that down in this side of this part of the glass there, and a little bit over there. That will become relevant later on as we go through the actual painting. Right, now I've got a second brush here, and look, it's damp. I don't wring them out, I just ease them out, and I'm using that just to take up the residue of the little puddles on the paper, because I don't want these this wash to start wrinkling the paper a little bit too early here. So I've taken off the runny bits. Now leave that to dry naturally. While that pale wash is drying off, look, I've just added to my palette now a cobalt blue. And also a chrome yellow. Look, when I mix them together, they now make my grape green. Now look, I've also got on my palette half a grape. half a grape to stop it rolling around all over the place. Right, now look, I can now just pop a little bit of colour alongside that to see whether or not I'm within the colour range of that grape, which I am. Now, in previous videos, I've always said, look, I just knock my colours together. But in this particular case, because it's almost like a wash, I want it well mixed. Now look, if you don't have a cobalt blue, use your ultramarine blue. It will still work, but it is just a little bit warmer than this cobalt. So with this game, we go with what we've got. Right, now I'm going to add a little bit more water to that. And I'm now going to just test it on my paper. Have a look at it. Yep, I think that's about okay. Right, before I get involved in the bunch of grapes, look, I've got a single grape here, and I'm just going to paint it so that you know what I'm doing while I'm painting the bunch without me having to explain each individual grape. Look, here we go. Now, round the top of the grape, there's my highlight. And I'm dropping down the grape, and I will rely on gravity to give me that contour of the actual grape. Now, here's my damp brush. I don't wring them out, I just ease them out. Oh, look at the end of that brush. There you go. Right, now, I go into the centre of my highlight, and I just wash it round. And I need to work fairly quickly on this one, by the way. And what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to leave this on a slight shallow angle to dry off, and rely on that gravity giving me the lower half of the grape. Okay, this is now touch dry. And look, it worked quite well. I've actually managed to get a little bit of modelling on the actual grape. It's a little bit jumpy around the bottom, but never mind, it works. Right, now, here is my next problem. Separating the grapes, even though I'm using one colour. Yes, I can the grape at the back, but bearing in mind this is I'm turning a one-dimensional into a two-dimensional, so I need to bring this grape forward from the one at the back. Now, yes, I can just fractionally change the colour. I could make this one just a little bit darker, and so this one's coming out into the light. That's one way of doing it. Now, the other problem is, look, I'm going to use the gravity on the bottom here, but when I come to use the gravity on this one, I also need to get a little bit of gravity in the back of this one there. So where it's actually dropping into shade from the grape in the front, into that point, and then back into this point down here. So for the purposes of simplicity, all I'm going to do is, as I paint, instead of allowing it to sit on a shallow slope in this angle, I shall let it drop down into these two areas down there. And the same thing will apply, look, this one at the back here. I need the gravity down the bottom, near where this little stem is, but I also need it here. So when I come to paint this grape, I'm now going to turn it around and allow it to drop into that area down there. So you'll know without me having to say anything all the time that is what I'm doing. So this one down the bottom, I need gravity down the bottom. I need a little bit in there also. So I will just lay it at this sort of angle. Right. Right, before embarking on the little bunch of grapes, look, I've mixed up my wash in a little tiny bowl. Any little bowl, egg cup or a white cup will actually suffice in this case. Before I actually get started on my painting, Once again, I will very gently wipe the surface of my area of painting, because I'm working in a wash, and if I'm using a wash, any little particle of dust will affect the way your wash operates in this particular case. Obviously, I mean, so if you're on a big sky or a bit of sea, it won't make any difference, but these are delicate little grapes. I've just activated my paint and I'm just testing it now on a little bit of scrap cartridge paper, because I want it to behave the same way when I come down onto the painting passe. Right, now I'll turn this round. Look, I will be fairly silent. Well, I will be silent while painting this first grape, because I need to stay fully focused on the task in hand. Okay, let's bring on the dreams. Right, now I will leave that to dry naturally on a shallow slope and let gravity do its thing while I do my thing. Take a sip of my tea. This first grape is now puddle dry. It's still obviously damp, right? I can now move to my second grape, which is going to be over here. And the reason I allow things to dry naturally is because if I was to use a hairdryer on this, yes, it would dry the grape out a little quicker, but it would also dry out the surrounding paper. It would have changed the natural humidity which is held in the paper. So when I come to paint this grape over here, the nature of the paper will have changed, and I want it to remain the same. So look, if you feel so inclined, there is no reason why you shouldn't just use a little, maybe you've got an opera fan, I don't know, you haven't used for some time, and gently waft it over there. Failing that, any bit of paper and just waft it over the top. It won't change the humidity, but it will help to dry the grape just a little bit. Okay, right, now I'm going to turn this one round now. I'm struggling with the focus on this one. Just bear with me for a moment. I'm sorry, I got out of camera focus there. It's very hard to look at the painting and the monitor at the same time. Okay, that one is a little bit more iffy, but I will allow this one to dry off naturally now. Right, I'm now going to go for my third grape. Yes, the second grape was a little bit iffy. I wasn't really carrying sufficient fluid in my brush. So this is a learning curve for me also. Right, now, the reason I'm going for this one as opposed to the one at the top is because although this one has had twice as long to dry as this second grape, it is still a bit on the damp side. So when I bring my gravity down, it will hit the damp grape and possibly run into the grape. Whereas if I choose this one, I'm running away from that damp grape. So this is the one I'm going to go for, and I'm going to need to turn this round. And I want a little bit in there, not too much by the way, because this I will have gravity on that grape. But so a little bit in there and really round this area here. So I will turn this to this sort of angle which will give me that gravity drop. Carry just a little bit more fluid in my brush this time. Right, I'm just going to test my brush on a piece of paper. Okay, here we go. Let's go for it. Got my damp brush. Right, now look, even before it starts to dry, see that little tiny piece there? There must have been a little tiny bit of dust, and it's clinging on to that bit of paint. But I'm going to leave it alone. And turn it round. Whenever he says he's going to leave something alone, he always goes and fiddles on a bit more and pays the price. It's alright, I'm going for the... I'm really struggling with this brush getting around the corners. Right, now look, I think you've we'll come back on this one when it is dry in actual fact, but I think you've gleaned what you can possibly do just by watching me paint these three grapes. So and this is a learning project, so I've got a lot more information to come forward. So while I'm going to paint this one at the top, and maybe this one, I just want to give you a little bit of brush information. Right, now while those grapes are drying off, look, here's my economy budget brush, and it is number 4. Right, now here is another economy brush. They are both synthetic, by the way. But look at the difference in the length of hair on there, which means to say, look, this one's got a softer tip to it, and it's got a bigger reservoir of water. So it will tend to follow my the hilt a little easier. Right, now, here is a sable one. This is also a number 4. Just fractional, there's not a lot in it, but look, it's got a very soft tip to this brush. Now look, we've got a situation here where you are doing a lot of learning. Okay, yes, you can use your budget brushes, but there comes a point when you're starting to get a lot of information into your head, and when you look at something, what actually happens is that you view it, the information goes round your brain, picks up with the information which you've gathered in how to actually paint it. It goes down through your heart, actually. That's how you feel about it. And it goes back along your arm, down your hand, into this little brush. And look, we've now reached a point where this little tiny tip is the contact between you and your piece of paper. All your information, all your love, all your struggling, all going down to that last little tiny tip. Now look, if I'm on a decent brush here, in actual fact it caresses or kisses the paper with a very gentle, loving kiss, right? Whereas this brush must be a bit like being kissed by an old stubbly granddad, right? Look, okay, don't let's go there. Look, I had a granddad, all right. Okay, so look, this is stubble, and all that information is going down, and we're going chunk, chunk, chunk on our piece of paper. So we need to caress it with something with a little bit more sensitivity to it. Okay, I'll stop chatting on that one. Other than this brush is, I'll probably get 2 of these brushes for that same equivalent price of that 12 budget brushes. Right, now that is grape 4 and 5 done. Grape 5 is a little better than grape 4, but comparisons are odious, as they say. Right, now look, while you've got your grape greens out, take the opportunity now of I said earlier on I quite like the green on the apple, so I'm going to pop some green on the apple now. And look, what I'm doing is, I need that colour just a little bit stronger. Look, I'm coming in at the angle at which the apple springs out of the core. So I'm trying to get some green dropping into the core. A little bit like we did on the cherries. So as it comes out, it needs to take the direction of the actual apple. So I want a little bit more green in that, so I'm going to run it round. Look, I'm keeping the angle going round there. I'm now just going to pick up a damp brush and just soften the edges. Even though I'm softening the edges, look, I'm still going round at the angle at which the apple grows. There we go. Right, that's enough. Just taking up any puddles which are accumulating on there, because I don't want big lumpy puddles as such. Right, now let's go back to these grapes over here. Now I'm going to zoom this in a little bit closer for you, just so you can see what's going on here. Okay, that grape turned out quite well. Okay, my painting wasn't very accurate, I'll give you that. But look, now I've got to be really honest and open with you on this one. When you come to do yours, please be kind to yourself. What appears to take me a few seconds to knock out a grape, it is not a few seconds, it is a few seconds plus a lot of brush hours which I've already acquired. I've got more years in me than you've got brush hours, right? So be kind, be generous, and be real about what we're actually trying to achieve here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this centre grape using a slightly graded paint and a brush. I want you to get a comparisons. It's like I say, this is about learning as much as anything else. So bear with me while I go and get my other palette, and I'm just going to do that grape in there. This is a little student range of colours, and it doesn't have the cobalt blue which I used on the first lot of grapes, but so I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine. It's not going to really make a great deal of difference, right? But the quality of paint is a little better. Now this one, they may, the pigment is a little bit better, plus the fact they may have ground this pigment for 7 or 8 days, whereas on your economy paints, probably 3, maybe 4 days, right? Look, on this little one, I've got a little brush on there. It's a pocket one, really, for taking when you're out and about and you want to do a little bit of painting. It's quite a good quality little brush, actually. I don't think I can zoom that in, but it's pretty good, actually. So useful. Right, so I'm now going to mix up this colour in the pan there, and we'll get that other grape underway. Now look, I can get round the corners much faster with a slightly longer haired brush. That didn't make my painting more accurate though. Right, okay, I'm going to leave that one now and let that one dry off. Right, now here's a very interesting little brush. It's the sort of brush which many of us have had for years. It's been laying in a box at the back of the drawer somewhere, probably since you last tried watercolor painting. Look, if it looks pretty good, but here, look, if I do this, look, it's lifeless. Look, it's got no spring, so therefore it's known in the trade as a dead brush. Right, now hang on to it, because it still has its uses. When we, if we get around to doing what is known as scumbling, that is sort of random little bushes, this is ideal. It's very hard for me to describe this as sort of kissing the paper, because look, let's be honest, it really doesn't care one way or the other, does it, right? So look, we've all been here at some point or another, right? No, I'm not talking about kisses now. I'm talking about bad hair days. What do you like? Okay, right, now I'm going to bring this brush out of retirement and paint my last remaining grape with it. Right, now, just before I zoom this in very tight, I've got one more grape down the bottom here to do. And I'm going to use my dead brush, my bad hair day brush. Yes, I'm expecting problems, but I need problems because there's still a lot more learning to do here. So let me go for this one, and I'm going to hang around on this one a little bit longer because I can't get round these corners with this brush as easily. And I'm having to twist the brush to try and make sure that the hairs which are following round there are under some sort of measure of control. Now I'm not too worried about the bottom section here because some of the shadow, I'll be able to cut this back. I don't believe this. It's going okay. Well, so there you go, innit? You've done for my years of skill again. Right, let's just take this highlight out, and I need problems. Actually, I've got a problem with that one at the top there. Okay, look, I'm going to just hang around a little while on this one because what I'm really looking for, I'm looking for a blotchy sort of grape here. I suppose some grapes are a bit on the blotchy side. Look, when my students are doing not necessarily a grape, but something of this sort of nature, and I know they're using a wash, I don't have to listen out for the size across the studio. I can actually watch their body, and their body starts to slump as all the gremlins are jumping in on them. I get gremlins as well, by the way. So at that stage, that is when they need a tutor or a friend with a little bit more painting experience than what they've got. And the most important thing for them is to turn around and give them a little bit of recovery time as much as anything else. So I will look at their work, and I'll just start talking about other things, and maybe suggest that we go and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and then I'll come back and try and help them sort some of their problems out. Because at the time when it's gone wrong, you do get very low. You think all that work you've done, and it's all gone wrong. But in this case, it's not true, because look, we've got a tracing. We can come back with a tracing on this one. But nevertheless, what I'm actually doing is giving them recovery time, and you need to do the self-same thing for yourselves. And I'm also allowing their painting to dry right off, because I can't make rectifications on their paintings wet on wet. I must have it dry. So when something goes a little bit wrong, don't beat yourself up. Learn from it. Take a little break. Come back and do the sort of thing which I'm going to do on here. And this is quite interesting actually, because I got a comment from one of the subscribers saying she was, or he, I think it was a she, was having problems with their water stains on their cherries. And I did reply back, but it's very, very hard to put it into words as such. And I suggested using a damp brush. So this may be a useful little exercise, not just for that student who asked that question, because that student will not be alone. I know there's an awful lot of people out there suffering in silence, and thinking, oh dear, you showed me how to do it and I still can't do it. So this is a good opportunity now for, let's say these are green cherries, all right? And I like water stains, but not necessarily on a thing like a grape, because a grape, if it's got too many wrinkles in it, you don't want to pick it up and eat it, do you, right? So in this particular case, we're working in sort of a very bland wash, and I'm just using this gravity to separate. Look, this is all one tone of wash, by the way, and I've been using gravity to separate the grapes, right? So water rings or stains, call them what you will, I quite like those. If you was painting a portrait of somebody like myself, you would need those rings and wrinkles in there to give me that sort of a little bit of aging, weather-beaten aging. But when we come to do these grapes, there will be times when you may be wanting to paint a baby. And if you get all these little water rings and imperfections in there, the baby will look as though it's sort of been out in the sun and got a little bit blistered. I've seen one or two, they look more like half a pomegranate than a baby actually. And it's only because nobody has taken the student to one side and say, look, this is what we can do. Right, now, firstly, I'm on cartridge paper. This would not be ideal for me to paint fairies and babies and things of that nature. So if you, when you're watching other people on the YouTube, and there are some excellent people out there, but you know, they don't actually tell you what is going on. So you see these blotches, and then they move over there, and next thing you know, as they're over there, these blotches are actually disappearing. And when you come to do yours, they don't. They just stand and look at you. So what is actually happening is the artist has got sufficient experience to know. Look at the shape of that brush. Experience to know that if they're going to paint grapes, or they're going to paint babies, or they're going to paint whatever it is which is going to need that, even soft flowers, they will select the correct paper for the task ahead. They can use their experience to do that. So when you see these things starting to disappear on other people's work, what it is they're using a very soft watercolor paper. And when I say soft, it's very, very absorbent. So it draws in the water very, very rapidly, and it doesn't really get a chance to go and sit there looking at them like this is looking at us here. Right, now I'm going to stop the chat here just for a moment, and I'm going to allow this to dry off, and I think it's now time for me to go and refresh my tea, come back, and we'll sort out some of these problems. These grapes are now totally dry. They're not damp, they're totally dry. I'm going to zoom them in very tight, and this is very unfair to come in this tight actually, because you wouldn't normally see a painting this close. It's almost microscopic. Right, now look, what I want you to look at, I want you to look at that student range colour grape in there, and you'll see that it's slightly cleaner and slightly fresher than the budget colours around them. And you can see that in there that this is almost like coffee without the milk and sugar in it. And this has got a lot of milk and sugar in it, and it's the emulsifiers. And look, it's a little bit clingy, right? I think that's about the best word I can come up with here. So look, in actual fact, that was the budget range, and it turned out quite well, but it still hasn't quite got that freshness there. Right, now this is the one which I deliberately messed up. And this is one which, in actual fact, I didn't deliberately do this one. I knew I was I was planning on having one iffy grape, or possibly two, but I didn't plan that one. And it's good that you actually see that, because now it means, look, it's the same brush man who painted that grape, painted this grape, right? So I can get, even with all my brush hours, I can still get things wrong. And I like my students to be able to see this, teaching by sort of in a negative stage really, because if they know that I can get things wrong and they get things wrong, they don't feel quite so bad about it. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom this back, and I've been and refreshed my water, so it's now pristine clean. And I've got a soft brush, right? And what I'm going to do, let's see how close I can get this. I know this is all time consuming, but it's important. Now I'm going to float plain water over this grape here. Now I'm going to, you can just about see the water on the end of my brush. I'm going to try and lay this on without disturbing the paper, and almost as if by magic the water seems to find the natural edges which you actually painted. And like I said, I don't want to touch the paper as such. Look, if I touch the paper while it's wet, what I'll be doing is I'll be disturbing all the little fibres and the dressing on the actual paper. Right, now I'm going to let it do its own thing. All I'm going to do now is just move that little bit of water there. Don't want to touch it. Right, okay, I'm just going to lay this flat and walk away. Okay, this one is now dry, so I'm now going to do the same to my other iffy grape. Look, I've gone straight over the highlight as well, by the way, because I don't want the grape to swell up. I've got to lay this down flat, by the way. I don't want the grape to swell up, but not the highlight, because then it would be like a dry island and it would give me a ring around it. Here are the two cleaned up grapes. I will actually put a still shot up in a moment so you can get a comparison as to what has actually happened here. Right, now they have improved immensely. Okay, look, now the gravity round there is it could have been round here. The highlight on there worries me a little bit because it's going in the wrong direction for a grape. It ought to be coming in the direction of this brush. That one at the back there is a little bit dark. Now look, I could actually walk away because, you know, a grape's a grape. But because this is a learning project, I'm going to go on a little bit further here. Right now, this grape here, I'm going to lighten it up just a little tiny bit. Right, and I'm going to do that by, let me just zoom that away just a little bit. Right, now look, I've got a little pad of tissue here, absolutely clean and smooth. When I say smooth, I haven't ruffled it up. So I will now zoom back in. There we go. Right. Fresh sparkling water, and I will lay this a little bit flatter than what it is at the moment. And look, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to drop my puddle over this grape. I think I've got it. Right, now I'll just wait a few moments. Once again, you need that little bit of patience there. Just so that the clean water reactivates the water. Now look, I'm going to put this down, straight down. Just put a little bit of pressure on it. Take it off. Right, now I don't know if it's there, look. Right, I've lightened it by that much. Now, I can do it again, but I'd rather let it dry before I actually do that again. And whatever you do, don't go scrubbing around with your brush on there. Because you're going to, once again, you're going to disturb the fibres. Right, now, this grape down the bottom here, I'm going to attempt to move that highlight just a little bit and possibly move that round just a fraction. Now look, this may all go wrong on me. There's no absolutes here, right? So bear with me. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong, right? I've still got my tracing. Look, I can do some more if I want to. He's very casual, isn't he? Right, now, okay. Right, see that little area there? Now, in order for me to move this, I've got a number of choices. I can put on a very, very pale yellow wash. But no, I'm not going to do that, but I can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my puddle down, once again, on there. And this time I'm going to disturb it just a little bit. And I'm moving that gravity around just a fraction. In fact, I'm going to let gravity do the work for me here. I need a little bit more water on there to make that work just here. Mustn't touch the actual paper. Right, now I will just settle back and allow gravity to do its thing once more, and then I'm going to come back and play with another grape. It's like I say, look, you know, I mean, say this is a learning process, and it's not for me to come out with something which is perfect. That in itself is not learning. Watching me struggle a little bit, that is what learning is all about. Right, and that's something which you don't see too much on the YouTube. You only see things at their best. Right, I shall be back in a moment. Having shown you how to lighten a grape, I'm now going to show you how to darken a grape. Now look, in reality there's really nothing wrong with that grape there, but this is the process. Now look, what I've got here is, look, I've got a very, very pale wash with absolutely clean water and clean brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to float this over this grape here. What it's really doing is just putting a blue filter over the grape. Right, now I will just once again leave that alone. Every time he says that, he goes and touches it again. Right, I'm going to leave that alone, and we'll come back and have a look at all the grapes, and we'll have a little bit of a roundup. Right, let's round up this little bunch of grapes here. They're not really about grapes, actually. They're about, they're a useful vehicle on which I can show you different techniques within the watercolor range. Look, we've put a filter on this one over there. I've lightened this one up over there, and I've managed to move, well, not so much move, I've diffused that reflection on that grape down there. Now I can ask myself, was it really worth it? The answer is probably no, if the truth was known. Or yes, I've made these alterations, but then sometimes these, if something is a little bit imperfect, leave it alone, because sometimes freshness is better than perfection. So these grapes are really all about not just grapes. They're about any sort of subject matter which you're attempting to do your watercolours on. Once you've had the opportunity to practice one or two of these new recovery skills, try to resist the temptation of going back to your folder and taking out one or two what may be rather blotchy pictures in the past and start making alterations of them. Leave them alone. You have changed, your paintings haven't. Love them for what they were at the time. Open, honest shots, okay? So what are you going to do? If you take one out and you make an alteration, what are you going to do? Now you're going to start changing that. 2003 stroke, well, 2004, 2005, add into an item, you know, up to 2014. So you'll have more dates on there than you've got actual watercolours on your paper. So know when to leave things alone, know when to move on. This also applies to me, by the way, because not unlike you, I've got gremlins. Look, I'm learning a new skill. You're learning about watercolour paintings. I'm learning about this little videoing. And you may have budget brushes. I've got a budget camera, right? And I do the best with what I can and what I've got. If I suddenly get a new camera, I'm not going to suddenly withdraw all my videos and remake them again. No, I'll move on. If I don't move on, right, I will just stay on this one video forever. And so I won't make any apologies for it. Look, I know there was a little bit of flashing going on, and I'm talking about white paper flashing, right? I've tried to overcome it in all sorts of ways. Look, here, I don't know if you can see it, I've actually put plasters around the end of my polished ferrules on my brushes because I thought it might be reflecting. Then I thought it was my rather rugged dark hand against the white paper. But it would appear, and I think I might be wrong, but it would appear that my budget camera has got a thing on it called intelligent contrast. Well, maybe on an expensive camera that would be, but on my camera it's really not that intelligent. So I've switched it off and I find that I've got some slight improvements going on here. Or I hope I have. So look, I'm not going to go back and edit those last sections, by the way, because that was me then, right? This is now me now, moving forward. Back to the task in hand. Right, now I've still got a stem and stalks to put on our little bunch of grapes, and also on the actual apple. I won't do those until the last moment because I've still got the background to go in behind the glass and the actual apple, and the shading to go under the actual grapes. And the last thing I want to do is, when I'm putting these little washes in, is to cut my way around a little stem. So I will overpaint that afterwards. So that will come in part 2 of this video. Before I move away from this, I'm going to go back to what we did on the cherries. And I just said to you just then that, so I'm getting my brush ready here, that I'm not going to put the stalks in. But what I am going to do, look, I know there's going to be a little stalk there, so like with the cherries, look, I'm just going to put in a little indentation there and just soften the edge. Just a little bit. Right. And wish you well with your little experiments on your grapes. For the lady who was asking about the water rings on there, I hope you're going to find this little tutorial helpful in making progress with your cherries. Right, so thank you for your time. Thank you for putting up with my chundering and the white paper dazzling. Enjoy. And next time we're going to move on to the apple and the glass. So take them as separates, and when you're a little bit more confident in what you're going to do, then we can start putting them together. Bye-bye for now. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, look, I've got one more little thing which I want to say to you. Yes, when we're doing these grapes, we're talking watercolours, but we're also talking about washes. So in this particular case, let's call it coloured water. Now look, I'm now about to do another grape here. Still struggling to get around the corners. Hey ho. Damp brush, when I can find it. There we go. Right, now, I'm now going to leave this on a shallow slope to dry, while I go and nibble at my grapes, because this is my tea. Right, now, it is without milk and sugar, right? And a little bit stronger than what I would normally drink it. But it gives you a clue as to the sort of wash you're going to need when you come to do these grapes. Bye-bye.